Steve Blank, who developed the methodology of customer development, is considered to be father of customer development.
I know people need X, or I know people need Y.
Steve has been doing this for a long time. He is very sensitive to how the world changes.
Customer discovery simply forces you to write those down.
Who knows best how, to develop your client?
Go outside and talk to 10 people.
Becoming, understand the customer fanatics.
Most people won't tell you your baby is ugly.
When we continue talking about the customer development and how important it is for the success of the startup, I had a great conversation thanks to you with Steve Blank, who developed the methodology of customer development, is considered to be father of customer development, and who knows best how to develop your client and how to develop your product based on the feedback from your client.
That's extremely exciting because Steve has been doing this for a long time. He is very sensitive to how the world changes and how that discipline changes. And you can never get enough of it, but having a pragmatic point of departure as a springboard for everybody to do that, I think will lead to hundreds of people becoming, understand the customer fanatics, which is going to be a lot more fun than they ever thought they'd have in a business.
I'm going to start with questions. So Steve, could I please start with most simple, but I think most important question. What is customer discovery and why does it matter?
Well, customer discovery is a pretty simple concept, and it's kind of a best practice of entrepreneurs that win, and it's not done by people who tend to spend a lot of money and time taking the right path. And it goes as follows, is that entrepreneurs in their passion want to build something. And they want to build something because they believe they understand the problem and want to go right to the solution. I know people need X, or I know people need Y. Let me put together a team, raise money, or just build it, or whatever, and then I'll show it to people. And the biggest problem is my space big enough to have all the bags of money that are going to come? Maybe, but after like 50 years of doing this, we have enough data that says most founders who think they're visionaries are actually hallucinating. And that is, they think they're right, but they're most often wrong. And what they're wrong about is not the solution. Actually, what they're wrong about is that implicit first step in the back of their head that says, I think I understand the customer problem. It's a big idea. That is, once you think you understand the problem, the solution to you looks obvious. But you've not yet articulated what it is you think you're solving and for who. And so customer discovery simply forces you to write those down. Here's who I think has the problem. Here's what I think the problem is. And, oh, by the way, here's what I think they would want as a solution. That's simple. Just write it down. And the discovery process is, humor me, go outside and talk to 10 people who you think might be your customers and ask them, will they pay for this? And of course, almost always they come back and go, well, they just don't get it. Or gee, they're not ready for you. Well, then find another 10 people. And again, discovery is simply what you have on day one in a startup is a series of untested hypotheses. It just means you're guessing about most of the core things you think you know. And what I'm asking you to do is just keep building whatever you're building. We got some engineers, great, keep doing that. But the founders, not some salesperson, the founders need to go out and validate some of the really simple hypotheses. What's the problem? What's the solution? Who are the customers? Will they pay?
Makes total sense. Thank you. And my second question would be, what's the most significant mistake that founders still make in customer discovery? Although you mentioned it a bit, even after years of this methodology being out there, you've sort of mentioned that, but could you elaborate on that a bit?
Well, listen, this is the nature of a founder. A founder is closer to artists than any other profession. They're driven by passion. It's not a spreadsheet business. So, the biggest one is thinking, well, this process is for someone else. It's not for me. I clearly know all this stuff. And again, you might, but the data says the odds are pretty low. So one is still believing you really don't need to do this. The other is, well, I spoke to 3 people and that's enough. Well, that might be enough if you're building a $10 million enterprise product and 3 people said yes. But if you're building a web or mobile app and you have 3 customers, you're probably, 10,000 people short of getting enough validation that you're, in the right space. Then the thing is kind of believing that all I need to do is write it down in a business plan. And this is an investor problem as well. And as soon as someone has given me money, everything I've written down has been validated. No, all that's been validated is your ability to raise money, not that the facts have become validated. So that's about the 2 or 3 things I would say, Ivan.
Thank you. And again, to continue that previous question, like many founders, they confuse validating hypothesis, which you were talking about, with just hearing what they want to hear. And how can they tell the difference from your experience between these real signals and their own expectations or hallucinations?
So what you're looking for is what we call product market fit, finding customers for the features you think you're building, not the product, just the features. And you could test that very early without building the entire product with a concept we call the minimum viable product, and called an MVP. An MVP could be a wireframe, it could be a PowerPoint slide, it could be whatever gets you the most evidence at any point in time in your process. And so while you still believe you have this passion, see if you could find people who want to use or buy your MVP. And you can now show them something and say, well, and by the way, everybody's polite. Most people won't tell you your baby is ugly. But when you ask for money, saying, well, you told me you'd buy it if I was finished with it. Well, here's an envelope. Why don't we put your money in it? And when I deliver 100% of what we said, and you said it'll be nice, I'll keep the money and you get the product. So that's the validation phase. First is discovery, and then there's validation. And validation is, can I actually get people to commit, whether it's commit an email or a credit card number or money or a purchase order or whatever, for an unfinished product that they said, oh, come back when you have the product.
Thank you. And then do you think, can customer discovery ever kill the innovation? Like, when it's better to trust founders?
So two places. One is when founders confuse customer discovery with a giant focus group. So customer discovery is not, and I want to underline not, the activity to go out and get every possible customer feature that people have asked for. Customer discovery is to inform the founder's vision of whether they're on the right track. I'll give you an example. I had students go out and try to figure out pricing for a product, and they spoke to 50 people, and they presented to the class, and and they said, oh, this should be a web app, and we should charge $9.99. I said, oh, that's interesting. How many people said that? Oh, 47. Well, what about the other 3? Oh, they were outliers. We discarded that data. Well, what did the other 3 say? Oh, it should be a piece of enterprise software. We'd pay $50,000 for it. Well, wait a minute. You discarded the other 3? Well, Professor Blank, 47 people are bigger than 3. Well, they missed the signal and the noise is the point. The discovery is supposed to inform your vision, not have you add up a spreadsheet and take the average or the mean. The other piece where it could go wrong is when you're building something disruptive, as McKinsey would call a Horizon 3 product, I would call a new market. Well, if I show you a phone today and say, do you want to buy this new one? You would ask me, what's better? Is it compatible with X or Y, etc.? It's an existing market. If I would have showed you this black rectangle, 30 years ago, you would have said, well, it's 10% faster than what? Like, what is it? What does it do? Now, all of a sudden, your sales, your marketing, the whole conversation, the whole discovery is completely different in a new market, in a disruptive market. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't get out of the building if you're creating something that people have never heard of. It means you need to get out and now do different types of discovery and understand what's required for you to kind of accelerate that flat part of the hockey stick curve of a new market where there's a long period of people have to understand the market. There's enabling technology that has to change. There's culture that has to change. Maybe there's regulatory things that have to change. Getting out of the building is very different than asking questions in an existing market. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. It does a lot. Makes a lot of sense. Thank you. And then could you tell me, like, how does the customer discovery process evolve depending on the startup stage, like pre-seed MVP stage versus, let's say, Series A? Is it still relevant after the first sales happen?
Well, it's still relevant, but companies now tend to default to what I call execution mode. If you think about what's different from startups than a large company or even a startup now in Series A, you know, large companies do what I call execution of a known business model, right? When you're a large company, right, a Microsoft or OpenAI, even OpenAI nowadays, you know who your customers are, you know what your competitors are, you know what your products are, you know, like there's a series of knowns. So basically what you're doing are hiring people and executing a known business model, a known sales process. Salespeople have a script, they know who to call, the whatever. Remember, the whole thing about the whole lean methodology is it was kind of the first methodology that says startups don't execute. Startups actually are searching for a business model. This distinction between search and execution had never been articulated before, though people kind of vaguely understood it. And so my point is that as you get larger, more and more of your people are actually assigned to execution. You start building departments and processes and whatever, none of them bad, but they in fact kind of beat out the creative side of searching and whatever, right? So yes, you should still keep doing this to validate existing customers or what's been changed, but also finding new opportunities. So the answer is you should still be doing it, but what will start dominating your people and processes is the ability to kind of capture all the things you've found in that search process and build it into an execution machine.
Thank you. And one more question, another question that I have is, does the approach to customer discovery change during crisis or war? Like, for example, there's startups in Ukraine now. How should the methodology be adapted to these circumstances?
So Ukraine is a perfect example of customer discovery in action and the lean methodology in action. You know, American startups is showing up on the forward edge of battle with drones, you know, are probably about, 2 years too late in trying to understand the EW environment that's changing, almost every day, or the comms environment. The whole lean method is close to the OODA loop, which is the observe, orient, decide, and act military version of how do we move quickly when circumstances are changing in real time. And so that whole lean methodology, I mean, the battlefield in Ukraine is lean in action, where you're learning very painfully what's needed, and it doesn't matter what the handbook said that was written 2 years ago. You're actually taking that data, iterating on your MVPs, which are the drones on. I don't have to tell people in Ukraine, the drones you have today and the drones you'll have next week and next month will look nothing like the middle of 2022. The anti-tank weapons you have, or the whole operating concepts on the battlefield look nothing like they did, in 2021. And those things are actually shaped by what adversaries are doing, what the Russians are doing, and what you guys are doing, et cetera. And that ability is actually, that ability to be adaptable is the core of what the lean methodology is. So, I remind students, at least when I teach the military side of my classes, that this is the best living example of how to be agile. Because part of the whole lean methodology, getting out of the building, is actually being able to use those MVPs to do something called a pivot. And a pivot says when you have new data, you're allowed to make substantive changes to any part of your business model, including your product or who the customers are or supply chain or something else. And so what I see is, Ukrainians pivoting in real time just for survival. So in crisis, this methodology, I think, maps exactly to what's going on the battlefield or anybody trying to supply them.
Absolutely agree. Thank you. And my last question for today would be, let's imagine you're starting a new startup in 2025. What would you do differently in customer discovery compared to what you were teaching 10 years ago?
AI. And I'm not singing a song. I'm actually saying that manually doing a lot of these processes, how to come up with your first business model, how to look at competition, how to, create maybe artificial personas or synthetic data to actually test again. All that stuff just didn't exist 10 years ago or 3 years ago. And it's just getting better every day.
Well, Steve, thank you very much. I appreciate your time and your contribution. I love your methodology, and I've been into that for, I think, over 6 years now. And we encourage startups to do that and to always start with the cost dev until they start, selling the product, or at least thinking they know what they have. So again, thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and have a great day. Thank you.